Hello and welcome to another edition of the TaschenHEINTZE. Today we're going to talk about the emulator for the Atari 2600. Stella. Where do you get it? How do you set it up? What kind of files do you need to work properly with it? One thing up front, I will not tell you where to get the ROM files for this emulator because I don't know the situation about the copyright. But if you are able to find this video on YouTube and you follow this basic instructions on how to use a browser, I'm sure you will find the necessary files on your own. So you heard about the Atari 2600. It's basically the grandfather of all consoles, and now you want to see what it's looked like back in the days. So where do you get it? Okay, you fire up the browser of your choosing, start up the search engine of your choosing, and just type in Stella emulator and select the one with the Atari icon next to it. Stella multi-platform Atari 2600 VCS emulator. You can click on it, then you are on the start page. On the left, you have user guide. I highly recommend it. You have the FHQ. Also, it comes with a highly recommendation from my side. And you have the download. When you click on stable releases, you get all the releases that are available for the Stella emulator. This is the first choice you need to make. My recommendation is that you download the zip file and not the exe file. Regarding on your operating system, you need a Win32 for a 32-bit operating system or the x64 for the 64-bit operating system. The main difference between those three files is that this and this file is an installer file, and this is only a zip file, where both emulators, the 32 and the 64-bit binaries are included. Also a lot of README files. I recommend download this file. I already have done the downloads in the background so that we can save a little time. Also, you should download the Stella snapshots. If you only want to use the Stella emulator, you will be good with those two zip files from this page. Then you need only the additional ROM files. Like I said, you can use a search engine of your choosing. Type in something like Atari 2600 ROMs, for example, but you didn't hear it from me. The next file that you can download, but it's not a requirement for the emulator, is that you download the retro N77 custom snapshots.zip because there are additional snapshot files in it. There you have a little bit more information about the game. You have the box art. Don't worry, I will show this all to you. So once you downloaded all the stuff, there's another recommendation. Use 7-zip or WinRAR to extract the files. You can use the Windows built-in unzipper, but it's not recommended. I show you why. Once you've downloaded the stuff, you have your 4 zip files, and then you want to extract them to a specific place or a specific folder. It's possible in Windows, but it's a little bit not that user-friendly as the freeware or the to-buy programs. By the way, if you use WinRAR, please be so kind and buy a license, because we do all know what happens if you don't buy a license. The earth will come to an end. Now, after you download those 4 files, you have the first major decision to make. Do you want to update the emulator on a regular basis, or are you good and fine once it's up and running? My recommendation, anyhow, would be that you create a folder structure like this. The top folder you can name emulator. Under this, you can then place all your folder structure for the emulator we are talking about. In this case, you have the Atari 2600. The name of the emulator, that would be Stella. And then you have the emulator folder, drums folder, and the zip folder. Those 3 folders are empty right now. But what I'm going to do is I'm gonna extract the files from the zip file in this folder. And you see what WinRAR is doing. WinRAR let you choose via right click extract here. This is not that simple with the Windows built-in mechanism. And in the zip file, there you can extract the image files. Depending on your performance of the computer you are using, this can take a few seconds. It's a lot of small files, so this will take its time. And also here. Now, as you can see, these names are the names of the files also in the emulator for the ROM files. So the emulator binds by name the snapshot file with the bin file, the ROM file. I will show you this in a second. So let's do a quick check. Yes, we need to extract something here also. You can mark those two and then said, okay, extract everything in a separate archive or a separate folder. The advantage of using a separate folder structure is that you can basically now create a backup of the emulator folder simply by copy and paste, and you will always have a clean install, so to say. Now, the zip files here that you can, if you find the ROM files, you can delete. Then you have here the bin files. These are your ROMs that you will play in the emulator. And also here under the ROMs file. What I'm doing right now is create a little bit flatter ROM or file structure, so I only move the files one step up. You don't need to do this. This is only for convenience so that you can save one or two mouse clicks later in the process. You can see on the size of the things, it's not that the ROM files, the games were pretty small in those days. Nevertheless, there are many files, 1,300 files. So yes, a lot of files, a lot of so-called duplicates. But we'll come to this in a second. So I can delete this folder here. Now let's start up the emulator for the very first time. Again, you can choose the 32-bit on a 64-bit version of your operating system, but not vice versa. So if you have a 64-bit version of your operating system, you can choose the 64-bit version. Let's create a quick shortcut on the desktop. And then we can close this folder for the time being and start the emulator. Oh, and by the way, as a controller, I have connected Xbox 360 wired controller as a joystick. The Atari 2600 has basic controller with only one fire button and a 4-directional movement joystick, so to say. So nothing fancy. Okay, when you start up Stella up the first time, you see what's new. You can click OK on this. Now, like in every emulator, you need to tell the emulator where he will find his files that he should play for you or that you want to use. Now, in Stella, you click on Options, click on User Interface, and there you have the Launcher tab. Now, first, we're going to tell him, hey, this is where you find your ROM files. And just a quick note, you see here, there's AppData roaming Stella. The AppData folder is in your user part. So Stella will save the configuration of the emulator in your user part. This comes in handy should you move the Stella folder from one computer to the next and wonder where is your configuration. You will find this configuration at UpData roaming Stella. Now I'm going to go up until I see my desktop. Click on Desktop, Emulator, Atari 2600, Stella, ROMs. Now, since we have two ROM folders here, I will choose this as a base folder, as a base from where I will start to click. This will save me some clicks additionally. Now, further down, you have the image path. Here you can select your path where you store the image files. Again, this was on the desktop, Emulator, Atari 2600, Stella, zip, snapshots, and click OK. And again on OK, click Close. Now, every time you start Stella, you should see those two folders to select. Let's check this theory. Quit Stella, restart Stella, and yes, here you see the two ROM files folder. So why is there a difference? Well, the ROMs folder are where the official, so-called official ROMs are placed. If you go up and choose the HC ROMs, here you have a different sorting order by alphabet, PAL versions, NTSC, PAL original versions, and all that stuff. This is basically a little bit of cherry on the top from the fans of the Stella emulator. Now, for the time being, we go up and select the ROMs. Now, for every game this is known to the Stella emulator, there's a picture with the same name of the bin file. I showed you this just a second ago. Let's revisit this. Stella ROMs. So you have this file or naming structure in the ROMs file and in the snapshot folder. View list. The exception is, of course, that on the snapshots you have a PNG ending, and on the ROMs file you have the bin file ending. They need to have the same name to be displayed correctly in the emulator. Now you can see what's the name of the game, and you get a little input about the game itself. And there's a new edition for the Stella emulator. Apparently this is a web link. As soon as you click it, and you have used Edge before, you get a good link to this website, and you can get additional information about the game. This is a very nice feature in this Stella version. Older versions didn't have this, and a big respect out to the fans who make this possible, so that you have basically for a lot of games an internet link for the game, so that you get another additional game information about the games. Now, if you start, for example, let's play Pac-Man. This is the original Pac-Man that I grew up with. Now, you will say, oh, crappy graphics, crappy sound. Yes, it was Atari 2600. But the main thing that I want to show you guys here is you have a crystal sharp image right now. That's not how it used to be. We had analog CRT tubes. We have not the best signal. We have analog signals and so on. So how can we create the same look? The sound will be the same, but how can we create this at least the same look? So this is how we remember it, the unsharpness and all that stuff. Well, you have the options button. You select your game, click the options, and then you go to video and audio, and here you have the TV effects. TV mode is disabled, and here you can select basically the emulation of the wire that you would have in reality from your 2600 console to your TV screen. So for the most time, it was a composite signal. That is the yellow chinch cable if you remember those 3-pair cinch cable, red one, white one, and the yellow one. The yellow one was always for the image. Now, then you can click OK, click close, and restart it. Now you see the 4 squares in every corner, how unsharp this image is. This is how we played the game. This is the closest recreation of the so-called shitty image from the past, but this is how we grew up. This is how we spent time and time again on this console and played those old games. It's interesting to see how it looks like. Pitfall. Let's take a look at Pitfall. And again, let's first change audio and video, TV effects, and let's say composite. What else can we do? Palettes. No, TV effects. Yes, that's okay. Audio, that's also okay. And click OK. Now, with the emulation, even on a moderate computer, you should have 100% of the game speed. Everything else in this emulator you can leave as is. Click close, and then again, voila, you have the unsharpened image via the sharpen image. I will show you the, let's do a comparison real quick again. TV effects disabled. Click OK, click close. And there you have the sharper image. Yes, the sharper image looks interesting, but it's not the way the Atari 2600 experience should be, to call it this way. Nope. Audio, video, TV effects. You also can customize your viewing experience, but there's nothing that you should do. Now, the next interesting thing is the scanline possibility. You will see it in a second. Now, you see those fine lines between every line or every second line. This is also a blast from the past from the cathode ray tube from the old TVs that you have physically. Yeah, you have the lines. You have a pattern built into your TV screen, and the emulator can also replicate this, as you can see here. So for complete back to the past, you should basically turn off under the TV effects your scan lines, and you can also choose what you like the most from the scan lines. Personally, I like the standard scan line effect, and also you can also use this in full screen. Click close. Now you have everything you ever wanted from your dad's machine. This is now live gaming on a Atari 2600 emulator with all the shitty games, all the shitty graphics, all the shitty sounds. But believe it or not, I personally spent hours and hours, not only with this game, but with a lot of other games. So, by pressing the escape button, you can always quit the emulation. Go here and remove the full screen. Click OK so that you have it back in a window mode. And click close. So that's it for the basic setup. Now, from time to time, there will be a new version of the emulator. And with that, it's quite possible that there will be some name changes in the bin files. The guys from the emulator are so kind to give us an audit tool. Under options, you can audit your ROMs. Backup. Create a backup before you do anything. Warning, operation cannot be undone. So click close, close. You can move it aside. And then you either have your download. In your downloads, you still have your original ROM files. So you are good to go if you have still this file, for example. Or then if you don't, go to your emulator Stella ROMs folder and basically create a copy of those folders so that you have a backup if something should go wrong. Since I have the zip files, I will cancel this. So I will delete the copy and I will show you what's going to happen. If you click audit ROMs, audit path, this is the path to your ROM files. ROM with properties renamed, and let's click audit. Okay, this operation cannot be undone. Your ROMs will be modified, and as such there is a chance that files may be lost. You are recommended to back up your files before proceeding. I can hardly not agree with this. Have a backup, 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 backup. If you're sure to want to proceed to the audit, click OK, otherwise click cancel. I am sure. And now he's auditing the ROM files. The auditing is doing the following. It compares the ROM files repository with the internal data file that the emulator brings with it. If the checksums are correct, and the naming of the files are correct. If there is any difference in the naming, but the checksum is okay, the emulator will rename the ROM files. He renamed 1,637 files. This is good. So after that, you can click close, close, and probably you will have some image files that are no longer working. But this is something then that you need to check for yourself. Is there anything I missed? I don't think so. So do a quick recap. You can download the emulator for free. You need to check about the ROM files somewhere else on the internet. You can also download the snapshot files from the emulator site. I recommend using 7-zip or WinRAR to extract the files. Under video TV effects, you can select the TV mode. I highly recommend if you want to enjoy the same gaming experience from the past, you select composite and play around with the scan lines. Yes, of course, you can play it all in full screen, but it's not necessary. Under the user interface or launcher, you can select your ROM paths and your image paths. And again, you can click close. You can go up here and then you can select the other ROMs. For example, if you want to play an NTSC version, and here apparently the picture files works also. That's always good to know. Quick information about the difference between NTSC and PAL. The PAL has a slightly higher frame rate than the NTSC. PAL has 25, while NTSC has 23.9, 24 frames, something like that. Not in the physical world, not every PAL cartridge could be played on a NTSC console or vice versa. So the emulator has the nice effect that it basically plays everything. That's good to know, and this is nice. I hope you can enjoy this little tutorial about the Atari 2600 emulator. If you want to see some other additional information about this emulator or some other emulator, please let me know in the comments. Until next time, I'm the TaschenHEINTZE.